Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Thanks. Okay, so just some ground rules. I'm here to talk about predicting unpredictable things. I'm not here to talk about elections. I'm not here to talk about politics in our highly galvanized political environment or the role of media. So as most of us know, in November of 2016, the US had a presidential election. And leading up to that election, there was a lot of speculation about what states would vote in which way and who would be the winner and all that sort of thing. And on November 4th, CNN updated its electoral college map, and it reflected 6 what they were calling battleground states: Arizona, Florida, Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, Nevada, New Hampshire, and North Carolina. And those states are reflected in the yellow gold color on the map. Now, by definition, a battleground state is one in which the outcome cannot be determined through the use of regular statistical instruments. And I thought, this is a perfect application for Psi, that the only way we could get any insight to this would be through some intuitive process. So around this time, I started working with something called a Symbolic Hieronymus Machine. Show of hands, how many people are familiar with the existence of this device? Okay, so a few of you, so I'm going to give a very, very brief overview of this thing. So there's first a physical device, and in 1949, Thomas Hieronymus was awarded a US patent for his device, which could be used for the detection of emanations from materials and the measurement of the volumes thereof. However, if you looked at the actual electronics of the device, it makes absolutely no sense. It shouldn't work at all. It follows no known laws of engineering or electronics, but yet people still reported being able to get results from it. Then in the late 1950s, John Campbell, who was a supporter of Psi research at the time, started to pen a series of op-ed pieces, and he claimed that if you removed all the electronics from the device and replaced them with nothing more than its schematic, you could still get results from the device. And thus the symbolic version of this machine was born. And Campbell speculated that the device actually worked by the user's or the operator's Psi, what we would call the human instrument. So this is the schematic that I use in my device. And there's 3 main parts I want to talk about: the sample or witness tray, the rate dial, and the stick plate. And the way this device works is you get your sample of the thing you want to measure, or a representation of the thing you want to measure, called a witness. You place it on the sample tray. Then you simultaneously rotate the knob while moving your finger across the stick plate. And when the rate dial is at the right position, your finger somehow sticks to the plate. There's a tactile change in the plate. I don't know how that happens. I don't know why. Well, we can talk about that, but I don't know the mechanics behind why that happens, but it happens. And it's not like your finger is suddenly like glued to the plate. There's just a very definite change in the way things feel. And once that happens, you now have the rate for the sample that you're looking at that's on your tray. So how do we use a device like this to talk about predicting future events? Well, in the case of elections, what I was interested in was first establishing what I would call benchmark rates for existing or historically red or blue states. So to do that, I looked at voting data from the past 4 presidential elections and identified 4 red states and 4 historical blue states. I wrote those names and their associations of color on cards, and then so I ended up with 8 cards that I could sample. And I didn't think that was very many, so I tripled that and ended up with a deck of 24 cards that I could use to establish benchmark rates. I then de-identified those cards, sealed them up, randomized them, and then used the Symbolic Hieronymus Machine to sample each one and come up with a rate. This is what those rates look like for the red states. So the device gives you a number range between 0 and 100. And here are the rates for the red states of the 12 red states in that deck of 24 cards spread across horizontally. These are the corresponding blue states. So to establish a benchmark, I took a mean of each state, took the means from each of the red state data and the blue state data, and you can see those means represented there. Red came in at 40.6, blue came in at 56.75. So then I repeated the process, but only with the battleground states that we identified earlier. I got their names, I wrote them on some cards, I didn't add their colors to the cards. I randomized them, put them on the machine, got a rate for each one. These are the resulting rates for the battleground states in numeric order, low to high. Again, now we can apply, to make the prediction, we apply the benchmark rates that we got, and we calculate the distance of the rate of the battleground state to its nearest benchmark. And when we do that, we end up with these predictions. Nevada, New Hampshire, and North Carolina would be blue. Florida, Nebraska, and Arizona would be red. When the election's over, we can look at, once the election was over, we can look at the resulting electoral college map, and we can see that we got 5 of those states correct. So I was also interested in how this protocol would work using a strictly random system. So I went to a website called random.org. You may be familiar with it. It produces truly random numbers from atmospheric data. And so I repeated the exact same protocol with the 6 battleground states, but instead of using the Hieronymus machine, I pulled numbers from random.org to get the rates. And these are the resulting numbers. And again, we apply our benchmarks, we make our predictions, and we find that we only got 2 correct using a truly random process. So, results. The Hieronymus machine resulted in 5 hits and 1 miss. Random.org got 2 hits and 4 misses, but yet at the same time frame, using every known and standardized statistical test and polling method, we were unable to make, pundits were unable to make any meaningful predictions at all in the same time frame. So just some random thoughts on this. I actually didn't think this experiment would work. I had a high desire for it to work. I wanted it to work. I was very enthusiastic about it. I didn't really expect it to work, although I did believe in the potential of the phenomena. I was crazy surprised when I actually first got the stick feeling, and now I have to say I'm completely obsessed with it, and I'll probably be spending the next year just studying that. Garrett was talking about decline effects and reliability, and in the last few years when I've been studying precognition, using a whole bunch of different devices and techniques and processes, I find that it works best when experiments are applied to questions that have no non-psi method to determine their outcome. So it's really about being selective about the questions that you ask and when you ask them. When researching the Symbolic Hieronymus Machine, I found that it came with a lot of preconceptions and expectations about right ways to use it and wrong ways to use it. When I discussed this with other radionics people or other practitioners, there were very strong opinions about that there was absolutely no way I should ever use this device in this way. And I began to realize that these pre-established expectations, if they're embraced by operators, may limit successful outcomes, especially when we try to branch out and do new things. And then I began to realize that because most existing psi devices and methods come with their own forms of expectation bias and baggage, it may be necessary to create a new class of devices that are more open-ended, that allow people to do more exploration on their own. One of my personal goals is to get people to embrace their own intuitive processes And so having a wide range of tools that allow people to do that is something I'm very, very interested in. So the main takeaways. This was an exploratory experiment which needs some refinement and replication. As I move forward with this work, we have more elections coming up in the midterms. There may be some opportunities there. I'm going to look at the stick thing and maybe think about skin galvanic response and its relationship to the stick. The protocol demonstrates the potential application of a symbolic Hieronymus machine for event prediction, and it potentially adds another psi modality to the mix. So again, I believe the more interesting things and the more tools that we have available, the more different kinds of people can get involved and have these experiences and learn to use their own intuitive processes. As always, no project ever happens in a vacuum, so I want to thank everyone that contributed, and I also want to thank the program committee for giving me the opportunity to give this talk. I'll take questions or comments of a non-political nature. Hi, York.
Hello, Mark. Okay, did you build your symbolic Hieronymus machine yourself, or did you buy it somewhere? And if you built it yourself, about how long did it take you?
So I built the device myself. I found the schematics online. I did modify those schematics slightly for my own use. I then purchased a wooden box, shadow box frame from Amazon for about $4. I turned it over and sorry, you probably look at the device really quick. Boop. There's a nice picture of it. Where is it? Sorry. Come on. Boop, 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 boop. So in case anybody wanted to see this thing. So I got this online. There's the URL. I'm happy to make this information available to people afterwards. So there's the device. So that box is from Amazon.com. I turned it over. I printed out my schematic on some glossy photo paper. I glued it to the top. I got my Dremel. I drilled a hole where the knob should go. I pulled the knob off a existing wah-wah pedal or a pedal I had for my guitar, the reverb pedal I wasn't using, stuck it in there. And so about 20 minutes to build it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. The idea of stickiness, this is the first time I've heard this in any professional audience. I appreciate the term. And the reason I'm interested in that,
I'm sorry, which term?
Stick.
Oh, stick, yes, stickiness, yes. Yeah.
Many years ago, I had the occasion to work with a dowser who did map dowsing.
Mm-hmm.
And her process was, if you're looking for something in a large area, get an aerial photo of that area, turn it over, so she can't see anything other than a white surface. And she would run her fingers over the side, the back of it, until it felt sticky. And then push a pin through it, turn it over, and that's supposed to be the site.
Right.
So stickiness, it's the first time I've heard that since that time.
Yeah, apparently it's a common, I don't know if it's common, but it's certainly common enough where in my initial explorations, I've only been working with a device like this for a short period of time, but it certainly popped up on my radar very quickly. So, John.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, John.
I love your enthusiasm for technology.
Thanks.
It's just amazing.
Especially really cheap technology that I can print on my printer.
Did you run any multiple trials with the same target to see if you get the same stickiness, the same results?
No, I didn't. Again, this is highly exploratory. I literally had a day to run this experiment between the time that the CNN map came out with the Battleground states to the election. I had to think about this thing, decide I want to do it, design a protocol, collect the data, and have it all stored and ready to go once, So there's a lot of really interesting questions to ask around this. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to chat with you about that, and Garrett and anybody else who's interested. But yeah, this is it. This is as far as this thing has go. So
as far as it
has gone so
it will
far.
Go further.
Yes, thank you.
Mark, interesting. I'm wondering if you're familiar with the work of George de Loire and the Bukako people who did agricultural stuff?
Vaguely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it wasn't prediction though, right? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mark. This is a classic example of radionics, actually, but
Yeah.
you've done a very fantastic, clever experiment. The thing about stickiness, this goes back to Tibetan dowsing, where people rub two fingers together, and a yes would be defined as the fingers are sticky, and a no, in dowsing would be defined as smoothness, no stickiness.
Mhm.
What does this come from? Sympathetic response of the body. In other words, more arousal, more sweat, more stickiness. Low level of arousal, no stickiness, no sweat.
Right. Has there been peer-reviewed research about GSR and stickiness per se?
Actually, I'm not certain, but this is well understood.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I
It's
get
out.
it, but
Yeah.
yeah, like,
I'll take a look for that.
yeah, I'd love to.
Did you publish this, by the way?
This is it, and I
Okay.
probably won't publish this,
All
to be
right.
completely
I
honest.
think you should.
Thank you.
The lady before me kind of covered what I was going to say. A cheaper and easier method is you take
Cheaper?
and
Okay, sorry.
you already own the components. You take your thumbnail, that's your stick plate. You take your other thumb, and then you ask your question, yes or no. So if it sticks, if you feel the stickiness on your thumbnail,
Mm.
that would be whatever your response, yes or no response would be. Or
Excellent.
you get the smooth. So you can sit in the grocery store or whatever you're doing, or wherever you're sitting, nobody knows you're doing it because you're doing this.
I don't know if I'm
Just
that
rub it.
coordinated.
Yeah, you're just rubbing your thumbnail.
Okay, that's cool though, thank you very much. Because I don't like standing up here, so,
Thank you, Mark.
thank you.